The Canon EF 50mm f1.8 Mark II. Is this the best budget lens for video? The EF 50mm f1.8 is an ultra lightweight, fast prime lens. Made almost entirely from a plastic chassis, it weighs only 130 grams. It has a very unassuming and uninspiring aesthetic, but coming in at around £60, this is something of a sleeper in the video lens world. It has a maximum aperture of f1.8, so ideal for low light situations. It's also really good for getting that shallow depth of field look. That aperture can stop all the way down to f22 and has a minimum focus distance of 45 centimeters. For sure, it's not going to win any awards for how it feels in hand, performs, or even looks, but this lens offers something magical, and that's hitting the sweet point between performance and price. And with that, let's jump straight in and look at the good bits of the Canon EF 50mm f1.8 Mark II. And first up is the value for money. It does have to be said, and in truth, it's what I really love about this lens. It gives you great low light performance, it gives that shallow depth of field, there's sharp images, and compatibility with APS-C and full frame size cameras. In truth, there's not much else out there at this price point that can match the Canon EF 50mm f1.8 Mark II. I also just love the aesthetic and general usability of this little lens. There's something I find really nice about an extremely lightweight and compact lens. Perhaps it's because I'm lazy, but something like this really comes into its own when you're using it all day. It's so light that you don't even notice it in your kit bag, and when it's on the front of your APS-C size DSLR, it doesn't weigh it down. So in truth, it's the kind of lens that you can use all day and forget about, and for that, it's absolutely fantastic. Optically, it's also perfect for those interview or talking head style pieces. That shallow depth of field really adds to this as well, because it adds that beautiful separation from the subject and the background. But with all things, there's compromises, and with that, let's jump in and look at the bad bits of the Canon EF 50mm f1.8 Mark II. The first bad point is the aesthetic of the image it renders. It is certainly not a beautiful lens. Unfortunately, the design of the aperture blades also makes the bokeh quite harsh and unpleasant to look at, but in truth, we are looking at a £50 to £60 lens here. It also uses the DC autofocus motor, which is noisy. Now, scrap that, it's very noisy. It's almost unusably noisy. If you're recording the audio internally on your camera, it's going to get picked up, it's going to be a problem. It's not necessarily a drastic one, but is certainly something you're going to have to be aware of if you're recording audio internally. And finally is the fly-by-wire focus ring and just the general build quality of this lens. It feels very plastic, flimsy, and quite cheap in hand. Now obviously no lens is particularly hardy or strong, but this one is so clearly made from a plastic chassis that it does feel a lot cheaper than most. And to go back to that fly-by-wire focus ring, it's very hard to use. It's in an awkward position on the lens. It doesn't protrude at all, making it quite hard to grab. It's also just quite an unnatural feeling. It's certainly something that you're going to have to spend some time to get used to. It doesn't respond in the way that you'd expect it to when you're using a normal manual focus ring. It just feels a little bit cheap. To be fair, I am being quite picky to highlight these as bad points, but they are all things you need to be aware of if you're considering buying this lens. For sure, this lens does have a whole host of shortcomings, especially if we compare it to its bigger and more expensive siblings. But there's something magical about the nifty 50. The fact that you can get tacked sharp images that are great for talking head or interview style pieces for the same price as its focal length, well, that's incredible. So for any budget conscious filmmakers or video shooters that have 50 to 60 quid burning a hole in their pocket, then I would thoroughly recommend the Canon EF 50mm f1.8 Mark II. It will make a great addition to your kit bag. For more information on this lens, there's some links below, and whilst you're down there, why not consider subscribing to our channel or even signing up to the Filmmakers Club on Patreon, our monthly club where you get access to our filmmaking assets to help you on your filmmaking journey. That's been my grab and go review of the Canon EF 50mm f1.8 Mark II. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.